We're breaking down the 10 worst moves of the Connor McDavid era in Edmonton. What's on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to NHL 24. We're back on HUD. As usual, we have a great game for you in the background. But yes, we are breaking down the 10 worst moves of the Connor McDavid era. So this video idea is coming over again from TikTok. I saw this one. We saw the kind of the moves on this list, and I wanted to break it down. So of course, it's a 10 worst moves. Let's start with number 10. So I don't believe these are in any particular order, but number 10 is the Taylor Hall for Adam Larsson trade. So yes, this trade was a 1-for-1 deal for each of the teams. New Jersey needed an offensive forward. At the time, Edmonton needed a defenseman, so they swapped them, right? So before Taylor Hall went over, before the trade, he played 6 years in Edmonton, had 381 games played, 132 goals, 196 assists, for 328 points at a -27. So pretty good stats, obviously being a top line winger for them, even before Connor McDavid was there. We're doing the right things, right? So good offensive player. Now what did they get in return? Adam Larsson, before the trade, 5 years in New Jersey. He is a defensive defenseman, so again, the points obviously don't really match up here at all, but 274 games played, 9 goals, 60 assists for 69 points at a +13. So again, you're getting a good defensive defenseman who can be reliable. You kind of have a lot of offense, especially with McDavid coming in. You're expecting a lot of offense out of him. So, I kind of get it. I kind of don't. But after the trade, Taylor Hall would go on to play with New Jersey for 3 years before halfway through the 4th year, he gets traded to Arizona. But throughout that tenure, he put up 246 games played, 86 goals, 149 assists for 235 points for a -15. Then after the trade for Adam Larsson, he played 5 years, and before I believe he then went to Seattle after that. But he played, like I said, 5 years, 329 games played, 16 goals, 52 assists, 68 points for a +5. So relatively consistent for Adam Larsson. Obviously Hall has always been a good offensive player. His numbers have been right there kind of before and even after the trade. So yeah, Edmonton did not get the better of this trade, but they kind of had, a surplus of offense, and they kind of were looking for some stability on defense. So at the time, it sort of made sense, but now looking at it years later, it looks like a very big lopsided trade. And number 9 on our list also has to do with defensemen, and that is getting Duncan Keith into Edmonton. So the trade was Duncan Keith and a random prospect who had never played for Edmonton over to Chicago for Caleb Jones and a 2022 third-round draft pick. So let's kind of break this trade down. So it was kind of Keith and a prospect for Jones and a pick, essentially. So what it was Caleb Jones was a decent prospect that was trying to find his game, right? He was still a young defenseman. He was like 20-something years old. I don't remember the exact number. But he was trying to find a spot on the Edmonton blue line. Wasn't really doing it too well. And they wanted kind of some veteran leadership, some veteran defensemen on that defensive pair. So they brought in Duncan Keith. Now, Duncan Keith was kind of on his way out in Chicago as they were in the process of rebuilding. So they get him. They made it to the conference finals. So it wasn't necessarily a bad trade for Edmonton. So I would argue that this would not be a worst move, or I definitely wouldn't be in the top 10. Our next move is Ryan Strome being traded to New York for Ryan Spooner. So this is a really interesting one. So at the time, Ryan Spooner had played 16 games with New York, had 2 points, -5. Not a good year for him prior to the trade. After the trade, 25 games played, 3 points, -6. Didn't really do much with Edmonton. He then went off to Europe, and I think he's still over there to this day. Now, what they gave up for Ryan Spooner, so before the trade, Ryan Strome had an 82 games played, 34-point year. Then the season he got traded, 18 games played, 2 points, wasn't really doing too well. So they were trying to kind of play the card of two kind of underperforming players, try to trade them, swap a scenery. Hopefully you can kind of, rejuvenate them and get them both back on track. But then the trade happened, and Ryan Strome became an actual pretty good centerman. So he played 63 games with New York, was a very solid top 6 forward for them for 3 more years. Like I said, was very solid, lots of points, basically their second-line centerman. I think since they had got rid of him or traded him or let him go in free agency or something, but very lopsided here. Spooner didn't pan out, and getting rid of Strome was a huge mistake. Our next move of the Connor McDavid era that happens to be one of the worst is signing defenseman Darnell Nurse to an 8-year contract worth $9.25 million a year. So he is currently in the second year of that contract, and he kind of averages about 30 to 40 points per year as a solid defenseman with a good plus-minus. But here's the thing. $9.25 million, you need to be a superstar, right? You need to be putting up, I'll say 60-plus points is kind of that minimum for a superstar defenseman that I would want to pay $9.25 million for, right? You look at guys like Erik Karlsson, Adam Fox, Cale Makar. I don't know why Makar was the last one I mentioned. But you look at those kind of superstar defensemen that put up a lot of points, that are huge impacts, throughout their team. And they're going to be getting up there around like $10 million or so. And Darnell Nurse, I mean, like I said, 30 to 40 point guy with good plus minus. So a good defenseman. But if it were me and I was making that decision, I probably wouldn't spend any more than like $6.5 to $7 million on him. What he brings to the table is good, but it's not superstar. You can call him a star. You can call him a player. But I don't think that contract he's earning, right? If he bumped up his performance, got 60-plus points, 70, 80 points, whatever it may be, then yeah, maybe. But if it were me, I think that's a huge overspend. Sixth thing on this list of the 10 worst moves of the Connor McDavid era is the Jesse Puljujarvi development. Now, what this kind of means is, if you don't know who Puljujarvi is, he was drafted 4th overall in 2016. So with Edmonton already having McDavid, already having Nugent Hopkins, already having Leon Draisaitl, already having, Nurse, already having these solid players, getting wingers and support players were kind of the name of the game for Edmonton. So Puljujarvi, Finnish right wing, who seemed to be a pretty good, offensive threat, just kind of didn't work out for them. So he averaged kind of 10 to 12 minutes for the most part. So like 3rd, 4th line. But when he was bumped up to like 15, 16 minutes or so, his numbers actually improved. Which kind of makes sense. Like he gets put in more offensive, shifts or more offensive situations. And his numbers actually showed he could be an offensive player. But for whatever reason, Edmonton decided to kind of give up hope on him. They traded away him to Carolina for some random prospect. And then story's closed, right? So he hasn't really worked out so far. I don't really know what his numbers are this year. But a kind of failed first-round pick, similar to Nail Yakupov. At number 5 in this list, we're down to the final 5, is signing Zack Kassian to a 4-year, $3.2 million contract. So context of this one is after the 2019-2020 season, he had a career year, 59 games played, 34 points overall. That's 15 goals, 19 assists. Had a good year, at least by his standards. But then they signed him to this contract, and then he never deserved anywhere close to that. So, in my opinion, if it was me, I'd want a consistent, almost like 3 straight years before I sign someone like him to a big contract like this. A huge waste of money, a huge waste of a contract. And in my opinion, he never deserved anywhere close to this kind of deal. You know, obviously he was drafted in the first round a long time ago, but he never really panned out to be much of an offensive player at all. So the fact that they signed him to that contract and he got away with signing that contract was an absolute fleece of a deal. But then after this contract, he was traded to Arizona and then bought out by Arizona after 1 year. And I'm pretty sure he is now retired, I believe. But the trade for that was in order to get rid of him, right? So the Arizona Coyotes acquired Kassian with the remaining of his contract, a 2022 first-round pick, which was 29th overall, a 2024 third-round draft pick, and a 2025 second-round draft pick, all in exchange for the first overall pick of Arizona, which ended up being Colorado's pick, being 32nd overall. So, I mean, Arizona at the time, obviously still rebuilding, still needs some money to get above the minimum cap, and you got to give up 3 draft picks just to get rid of him. And you even trade up 3 spots in this trade. I don't know how they did it, but yeah, don't sign, you know, enforcer, 4th line tough guys to big contracts. It never works out for you. Well, for the second time in this list, I don't really understand this next one. And of course, all of these points are right from the video. We're just giving our thoughts on them. Number 4 on our list is drafting Philip Broberg. Now, again, this one I don't really understand because he is still young. He was drafted at 18. He's now 22. He still has lots of time to grow and develop, and especially given Edmonton's situation, he seems to do well in the AHL. Let him play down there, get a full year down there under his belt. Let him develop, let him, you know, perfect his craft. Let him be down there and actually play games that he can do well in. Because every year so far with his career, I don't have it pulled up, but he seems to kind of split the year between Edmonton and Bakersfield for the AHL. And he does well in the AHL, comes up, plays like 10 games, maybe has a point, goes like -5, and just doesn't seem to do well. So let him develop. He's still young. So this one, I don't really understand. Next on our list, at our third reason why these moves are all terrible, is signing Milan Lucic to a 7-year, $6 million contract, coming off 8 years with Boston and a year with the LA Kings, putting up 647 games played, 397 points overall. And again, just a contract that just you don't deserve at this point. Now, he is a decent kind of middle 6, you know, left winger, tough guy, a power forward that can put up some points. But especially given how careful you need to be with money at Edmonton, this was not a good deal, right? So after that contract, if they're signing a new contract, he very much went downhill after the first year. So he put up actually a pretty good year, first year, 50 points in 82 games. So stayed healthy and put up a decent amount of points. Then dropped down to 34 points the following year. The next year, 20 points, and just slowly started that nosedive of performance. He was then traded away to Calgary along with a 3rd round pick for James Neal. And I think that had some conditions in there about performance and everything. But still, don't sign big tough guys to big contracts. It never works out for you. Number 2 on our list is signing Zack Campbell to a 5-year contract at $5 million. So again, this one looks to be, at least at the time, wasn't a bad contract or a bad deal. But given how he started this year, that's where it kind of runs into an issue. So, for context, Jack Campbell, the goaltender, he was signed as a free agent after a kind of very inconsistent career leading up to the 2020-2021 season, where he actually had really good numbers. 17, 3, and 2 as a tandem goalie situation with Freddie Andersen in Toronto. And, this was the COVID year, I believe, so the bubble and everything. So Andersen went 13, 8, and 3 following that year. They traded away Freddie Andersen to Carolina. And now with Freddie Andersen being gone, now Jack Campbell's your guy, right? So with him now being the starting goaltender there, he put up an incredible year, right? 31 wins, 9 losses, 6 extra time losses, a 2.6 goals against, a .914 save percentage, and actually was pretty good. Now, he did share the net with Stuart Skinner, playing a little bit better than him, going 29, 14, and 5, 2.75 goals against, .914 save percentage. So, kind of a battle, right? Campbell's the established guy for the last couple of years, doing well. Have him in a battle with Stuart Skinner, who's your young goalie. Let him compete, let him have a good kind of competition, good platoon, and go from there. Then this year as a whole for Edmonton, it just did not go well. They started off horribly, right? Both him and Skinner not doing well. Started off 1-4 in 5 games, a 4.5 goals against, an .873 save percentage, where he is sent down and put on waivers and sent down to the AHL. Then after being sent down to the AHL, he continued up this lackluster performance. I think only winning like 1 game in his first 5. So not the start you wanted. Stuart Skinner has kind of righted the ship a little bit, going, kind of even through, since then. That was like a month or 2 ago. We did make a video about that. But can he recover? Can he recoup himself and play better? I guess we'll find out. And our last and final, number 1 on the top 10 worst moves of the Connor McDavid era is trading for Griffin Reinhart. Now, don't get me wrong. At the time, it seemed like a decent trade. But then it happened, and then you kind of see what he did, and yeah. So Edmonton acquired Reinhart from the New York Islanders in exchange for a 2015 first-round pick and a second-round pick, being 16th and 33rd overall. The New York Islanders would then use these draft picks to draft none other than Matthew Barzal. The other draft pick was used in other trades and traded to Tampa Bay and kind of lost. But you traded for Griffin Reinhart only to get kind of snubbed on Matthew Barzal. So we obviously know what Barzal's been doing. I'll say a star over in New York. He then played 1 season with Edmonton, splitting the year with Edmonton and the AHL in Bakersfield. Not really having good numbers, and then not even playing in the second year of his time at Edmonton. Going in the NHL, he had 29 games played. He had 1 point in that time, a -6. In the AHL, 30 games played, 10 points, +2. Again, not really good at all. He was then claimed by Vegas in the expansion draft, signing a 2-year deal. He played in the AHL for a couple of years, put up decent numbers, but was never really called up or relied on to do much of anything. Then he went overseas before then retiring in the 2022, or after the 2022 season. So a big failed trade. You trade away 2 draft picks, where you could have had Matthew Barzal, and instead, you get a guy that did not pan out for you at all. So this is just 10 of the worst moves in the McDavid era. There's probably more out there, but that's all I'm going to have for today's video. If you did enjoy, leave a like down below if you did enjoy. If you haven't yet, or if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, turn those post notifications on, and let me know all of your thoughts and comments. Are these the 10 worst? In what order would you put them in? And did we miss any? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, we'll see you in the next one.